The sun had barely dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden hue across our living room, when the world as I knew it shattered into a million pieces. I walked in, the smell of her favorite wine lingering in the air, a hint of something sweet and tart that usually brought a smile to my face. I had planned to surprise her with dinner, a small gesture to celebrate our anniversary, but what I stumbled upon instead was a scene that would forever alter the course of my life. There she was, my wife, laughing with a man I had never met before. He was tall, with an air of confidence that I could smell from a mile away, and his hands were deftly swirling a glass of red wine, as if it were a magical elixir that could charm anyone who dared to take a sip. I stood frozen at the doorway, my hands gripping the frame as I watched her lean in closer to him, her laughter ringing like a siren's call, while the man whispered something that made her tilt her head back in delight. In that moment, time seemed to stretch and contract all at once. My heart raced, pounding against my chest like a caged animal desperate to escape. Shock washed over me like a cold wave, followed by a burning betrayal that ignited a fire deep within my gut. I had always believed that our love was impenetrable, that we were a fortress against the world. But there I was, an intruder in my own home, witnessing the unraveling of everything I thought I knew. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but I felt paralyzed. The words caught in my throat, a lump of confusion and hurt that I couldn't swallow. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Who was this man? What had I done to deserve this? I had trusted her completely, and now that trust lay shattered on the floor like the delicate glass she held in her hand. As they continued their flirtation, oblivious to my presence, I quietly backed away, retreating into the shadows of the hallway. Each step felt like a betrayal of my own, but I needed time to process what I had seen. I stumbled into our bedroom, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I sank onto the edge of our bed, my mind racing with the implications of her infidelity. The betrayal cut deep, a jagged knife twisting in my heart. I thought of all the moments we had shared, the laughter, the late-night talks, the plans we had for our future. I had always envisioned us growing old together, sipping wine on a porch somewhere under the stars. Now that future was tainted, poisoned by the reality of her deceit. I took a deep breath, my chest tightening as I grappled with the myriad of emotions swirling within me. Anger bubbled to the surface, a hot rage that burned away the remnants of my confusion. She had betrayed not only my trust but the sanctity of our marriage. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about ensuring that I would not be the victim in this twisted game. I knew then that I had to act. This wasn't just an affair, it was a declaration of war. I had to find a way to retaliate, to make her feel the weight of her choices. I could not allow her to continue enjoying the fruits of her betrayal, to sip wine and laugh with the very man who had stolen her heart. No, I would not stand idly by while she reveled in her infidelity. As I sat there, my mind racing with possibilities, a single thought crystallized in my mind. I would take away the one thing that brought her joy, the wine that had become a symbol of her betrayal. I would buy the vineyard where that sommelier worked, cut off her supply, and watch as she struggled to find solace in a glass that would never again taste the same. This was just the beginning. Before that fateful evening, my life with Clara had been a tapestry woven with shared dreams and laughter. We met in college, two bright-eyed students who bonded over late-night study sessions and a mutual love for culinary adventures. I remember our first date like it was yesterday, dining at a quaint little bistro that boasted an extensive wine list. Clara's eyes sparkled with excitement as she navigated the menu, her passion for wine evident even then. I was captivated, not just by her beauty but by the way she spoke about wine as if it were an extension of her soul. In the years that followed, our relationship blossomed. We married after graduation, throwing ourselves into our careers while nurturing our love. I became an architect, while Clara pursued a career as a sommelier, eventually landing a prestigious position at a well-known restaurant. She thrived in that environment, her knowledge of wine growing deeper with each passing year. Our weekends were often spent visiting vineyards and attending wine tastings, sharing bottles that sparked joy and conversation. But as the years went by, I began to notice subtle changes. Clara became more absorbed in her work, often returning home late, her mind still swirling with the complexities of the wines she'd tasted or the new vintages she was excited about. I tried to be understanding, encouraging her passion, but it felt like a widening gap was forming between us. I missed the intimacy we once shared, the late-night talks about our dreams, the spontaneous adventures that had defined our early relationship. I brushed off my concerns, convincing myself that her dedication to her career was simply a reflection of her ambition. Yet, there were moments when I sensed something was amiss. The way she would receive texts during dinner, her smile too wide, her laughter too forced. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my insecurities were getting the best of me. After all, I loved her and she loved me. We had built a life together, hadn't we? But now, standing in the aftermath of that devastating revelation, I realized how blind I had been. I had ignored the signs, the subtle shifts in her demeanor, chalking them up to the demands of her job. I replayed the moments in my mind, the late nights, the whispered conversations she had taken outside, the way she had started to treat wine with reverence, as if it held secrets I could never understand. I had been so wrapped up in the image of our life together that I failed to see the cracks forming beneath the surface. It was as if I had been living in a dream, and now I was jolted awake, confronted with the harsh reality that I had been sharing my life with someone who was no longer fully present. The betrayal stung deeper with each memory I dissected, each moment I had cherished now tainted by doubt. As I sat on the edge of our bed, I felt a mix of anger and sorrow. I had loved her fiercely, given her my heart and soul, only to find it trampled beneath the weight of her infidelity. The very foundation of our relationship felt like quicksand, shifting and unstable. The woman I had once admired, who had inspired me to dream bigger, was now the source of my pain. I thought about the sommelier, the man who had taken her attention away from me. Who was he? What did he have that I did not? As jealousy gnawed at my insides, I made a promise to myself. I would not let their affair go unpunished. I would take control of the situation, reclaim my power, and ensure that she felt the consequences of her choices. The idea of revenge began to take root in my mind, a dark seed sprouting in the fertile soil of my hurt. I imagined her face when I confronted her, the shock and disbelief that would wash over her as I revealed my plan. I would buy the vineyard where that sommelier worked, cut off her access to the very thing that had become a symbol of their affair. The thought of her struggling to find joy in the wine that once brought her happiness filled me with a sense of purpose. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I contemplated my next steps. The more I thought about it, the more the plan crystallized in my mind. I would not be a victim. I would be the architect of my own fate. As I gathered my thoughts, I realized that this was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about ensuring that I would no longer be the one left in the shadows while she danced in the light. I had to act quickly. I needed to gather information, to learn everything I could about the vineyard and the sommelier who had stolen my wife's heart. The thought of Clara savoring a glass of wine, oblivious to the consequences of her actions, drove me forward. I was determined to take back what was mine, to ensure that she would never enjoy the taste of betrayal again. The days following my discovery were a blur. I moved through my routine like a ghost, my mind consumed by thoughts of betrayal and revenge. Clara went about her life, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I watched her from a distance, feigning normalcy as I tried to piece together a plan that would deliver the justice I craved. I found myself obsessing over the vineyard, the very place where Clara had found refuge in the arms of another man. It was a small, family-owned establishment nestled in the heart of wine country, renowned for its exquisite selections and charming ambience. I spent hours researching the vineyard online, learning about its history, the owners, and its reputation in the community. Every detail I uncovered fueled the fire of my resolve. The sommelier, Victor, was a well-regarded figure in the wine world. His expertise was celebrated, and his ability to pair wines with food was nothing short of artistry. I could see why Clara would be drawn to him. He embodied everything that I had admired in her, a passion for wine that transcended mere appreciation. But that only made my anger burn hotter. I refused to let her indulge in the fruits of her disloyalty. I began devising my plan. The idea of buying the vineyard took shape in my mind, a bold move that would not only cut off Clara's access to her beloved wine, but also serve as a public declaration of my pain. I envisioned her reaction when she learned that I had acquired the very place where her affair had blossomed. The thought of her facing the consequences of her actions filled me with a sense of satisfaction I had not felt in days. But purchasing a vineyard was no small feat. I needed to gather resources, both financial and logistical. I reached out to a few contacts in the real estate world, discreetly inquiring about vineyards for sale. I learned that the market was competitive, but there were opportunities for someone willing to invest. My heart raced with every conversation, each step bringing me closer to the reality of my plan. I spent sleepless nights formulating strategies, weighing the pros and cons of my decision. The more I thought about it, the clearer my motivations became. This was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my identity. I had spent years supporting Clara's dreams, always standing in her corner, but in her betrayal, I felt unseen, as if I had become a mere footnote in her story. Buying the vineyard would be my way of stepping back into the spotlight, of asserting my presence in a life that had begun to feel foreign. With each passing day, I felt a growing urgency. I needed to act before Clara had a chance to realize what was happening. I started to set aside money, reallocating funds from my savings and investments, preparing to make an offer that would shake the very foundation of our lives. I envisioned the moment I would confront Clara, revealing my plan to her. The image of her shock, the realization that she could no longer indulge in the wine that had become a symbol of her betrayal, fueled my determination. As I plotted my course, I became increasingly consumed by the idea of revenge. I found myself daydreaming about the vineyard, imagining the lush grapevines and the picturesque landscapes, but also envisioning the moment I would walk into that tasting room, knowing that Clara would no longer feel at home there. I wanted to watch her squirm, to see the discomfort etched on her face when she realized the consequences of her choices. I couldn't shake the feeling of empowerment that came with my plan. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt like I was taking control of my life. I was no longer a passive participant in this twisted drama. I was the one writing the script. The thought of seeing Clara's face when she learned of my actions was exhilarating. I would be the one to pull the rug out from under her, to show her that I would not be a victim of her choices. In my mind, I had already won. I could see the vineyard in my grasp, the keys to a new chapter of my life dangling just out of reach, waiting for me to take hold of them. I would not only cut off her supply of wine, I would cut off the very source of her betrayal, leaving her with nothing but the bitter taste of her own choices. With my resolve solidified, I began making calls, setting plans in motion. I reached out to a real estate agent specializing in vineyards, ready to take the first step towards reclaiming my life. As I hung up the phone after our initial conversation, a sense of anticipation washed over me. I was ready to take this leap, to dive into a new world where I would be the master of my fate. The decision was made. I would buy the vineyard. The process of buying the vineyard was both exhilarating and daunting. With each passing day, as I navigated the complexities of real estate transactions, I felt the weight of my decision settle deeper into my bones. I had made up my mind, and now it was time to turn my intentions into reality. I met with the real estate agent, a woman named Linda who specialized in vineyards and had an impressive portfolio. She was knowledgeable and eager to help, but I sensed a flicker of hesitation when I explained my interest in the property. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her brow furrowing slightly. "Vineyards are a significant investment both financially and emotionally. It's not just about the purchase, it's about the commitment." I nodded, fighting to suppress the anger that bubbled up at her words. I didn't want her to see my motivations, to know that this was about revenge rather than a true passion for winemaking. "I understand," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "I'm ready to take on the challenge. I want to make an offer." As we drove to the vineyard, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The landscape unfolded before us, rolling hills covered in lush grapevines that seemed to stretch endlessly. It was beautiful, almost idyllic. I tried to envision what it would be like to own this land, to transform it into a space that would no longer serve as a backdrop for Clara's infidelity, but rather as a new chapter in my life. When we arrived, the vineyard's charm struck me. The tasting room was quaint, with rustic wooden beams and large windows that offered stunning views of the vines. I imagined Clara standing there, sipping wine with Victor, her laughter echoing in the air. The thought ignited a fire within me. This would be my domain, and I would reclaim it for myself. Linda introduced me to the current owner, a middle-aged man named Roger who had owned the vineyard for decades. He was passionate about his work, and I could see the love he poured into every grape that grew on his land. As we toured the property, he spoke of the history and the hard work that had gone into building the vineyard's reputation. I listened intently, trying to absorb every detail while formulating my strategy. When the time came to discuss the sale, I felt a surge of determination. I made my offer, a number that I believed was fair but would still push me financially. Roger raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by my aggressive stance. "It's a competitive market," he warned. "You might want to consider the long-term implications of this investment." I felt a flicker of doubt but quickly pushed it away. I had made my decision and I wasn't about to back down now. "I appreciate your concern," I replied, my voice steady. "But I believe in the potential of this vineyard and I'm ready to make it work." As negotiations continued, I found myself swept up in the excitement of the deal. I imagined the transformation I would bring to the vineyard, the way I would reshape it into a place that reflected my vision. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking a tightrope, balancing between my desire for revenge and the reality of my actions. Once the contract was signed and the deal was finalized, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I was now the proud owner of a vineyard, a place that had once been a symbol of betrayal. I stood on the property, taking in the sights and sounds of this new chapter in my life. I was filled with a sense of empowerment, but I also felt a twinge of guilt. Was I truly ready to take on this responsibility, or was I simply using it as a means to soothe my wounded pride? As the days turned into weeks, I began to immerse myself in the operations of the vineyard. I hired a manager to help oversee the day-to-day activities, but I made it clear that I wanted to be involved. I pored over financial reports, learned about the intricacies of winemaking, and even attended tastings to better understand the business. Each moment spent there felt like a step towards reclaiming my identity. Yet, as I settled into my new role, I couldn't help but think of Clara. I imagined her reactions when she learned that I had bought the vineyard. Would she be shocked? Would she feel the weight of her choices? I wanted to watch her squirm, to see the discomfort etched on her face when she realized that her affair had not only cost her the trust of her husband, but also the very source of her joy. But I also began to feel the implications of my actions. I was no longer just a husband seeking revenge. I was a businessman in a world that demanded hard work and dedication. The vineyard required my attention, and I found myself consumed by the responsibilities that came with ownership. I was torn between the satisfaction of my plan and the reality of the life I had chosen. As I stood among the grapevines, I felt a mix of triumph and trepidation. I had taken control, but at what cost? Clara would soon know what I had done, and I could only hope that the consequences would be as profound as I envisioned. I was determined to make her feel the weight of her choices, to ensure that she would never again find solace in the very thing that had come to symbolize her betrayal. The stage was set, and I was ready for the next act. The day I decided to confront Clara felt like a storm brewing on the horizon. I had been living with this secret for weeks, the weight of my actions pressing down on me as I prepared to reveal the truth. I had bought the vineyard, and soon she would know that I had taken control of the situation in a way she never anticipated. It was a Friday evening when I finally decided to break the news. I invited Clara to dinner, suggesting we try a new restaurant that had just opened nearby. I could see the excitement in her eyes as she dressed for the occasion, her laughter echoing through the house. But inside I was a bundle of nerves, my heart racing as I rehearsed the words I would say. As we sat across from each other at the table, I felt the tension building. Clara was animated, discussing her day at work, her passion for wine spilling over in her words. It was as if nothing had changed, as if the world hadn't been turned upside down. I watched her, the woman I once adored, and felt a mix of affection and anger simmering beneath the surface. After the appetizers were cleared away, I knew it was time. I took a deep breath, feeling the heaviness of the moment settle over me. "Clara," I said, my voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of tension, "I need to talk to you about something important." Her smile faded slightly and she leaned in, concern etched on her face. "What is it? You're scaring me." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. "I want you to know that I've been doing some thinking about us, about everything." "What do you mean?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "I mean about your affair," I replied, my voice low and deliberate. "I know about you and Victor." The silence that followed was deafening. Clara's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment I thought she might deny it, but the look on her face told me everything. She was caught off guard, and the truth hung between us like a thick fog. How do you know?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw you," I said, my voice steadying. "I saw you with him, laughing and enjoying each other's company. I saw the way you looked at him, Clara. I know what you did." Her expression shifted, a mix of guilt and disbelief washing over her. "I can explain." "No," I cut her off, the anger bubbling to the surface. "There's no justification for what you did. You betrayed me, Clara. You betrayed everything we built together." Tears welled in her eyes, and I could see the weight of my words sinking in. She opened her mouth to speak, but I pressed on, needing to get everything out before the moment slipped away. "And that's not all. I did something about it." "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I bought the vineyard," I said, watching as her face fell. "The vineyard where you and Victor shared your little secret. I'm the new owner." Her expression morphed from shock to disbelief, and I could see the realization dawning on her. You can't be serious," she stammered, shaking her head. "You didn't buy the vineyard just to hurt me, did you?" "I did it to take back control, Clara," I replied, my voice rising. "I won't let you enjoy the fruits of your betrayal. I won't let you sip wine and reminisce about your affair while I sit here in silence." The tears streamed down her face now, and I felt a pang of guilt for the pain I was causing her, but the anger was too strong. "You took everything from me," I continued. "You shattered my trust, and now it's time for you to face the consequences." Clara's composure broke, and she leaned forward, desperate. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I love you, I do. Please, let's work through this." But I shook my head, the resolve hardening within me. "You had your chance, Clara. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. You won't be able to go back to that vineyard, to the place where you found solace in another man's arms. I'll make sure of it." The room was heavy with tension, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Clara looked at me, her eyes pleading, but I stood my ground. I had taken control, and as much as I wanted to reach out and comfort her, I knew I couldn't. I had to see this through. "I can't believe you would do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're willing to destroy us over this." "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to reclaim my dignity," I replied, my voice firm. "You made your choice, and now you'll live with the consequences." As I watched her crumble, a part of me felt a bittersweet satisfaction. I had taken a stand, and the power was finally in my hands. But as the tears fell from her cheeks, I couldn't help but wonder if I was losing more than just a wife. The confrontation had laid bare the raw emotions between us, and I realized that the path I had chosen was fraught with pain. I was determined to see it through, but I also knew that the aftermath would be complicated. Clara's betrayal had ignited a fire within me, but as I stood there, watching her anguish, I wondered if revenge would truly heal the wounds or if it would only deepen them. The days following our confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions. Clara had moved out, leaving our home empty and quiet, echoing with the memories of laughter that now felt like a distant dream. I had taken control of the vineyard, immersing myself in its operations, yet I felt a hollow victory. The thrill of revenge had been exhilarating, but now I was left with the weight of my actions pressing down on me like a heavy shroud. I threw myself into my new role as the owner of the vineyard, working tirelessly alongside the manager I had hired. I learned the ins and outs of winemaking, from pruning the vines to managing the tasting room. I poured every ounce of energy into the business, hoping to drown out the turmoil that had become my life. But no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't escape the reality of what I had done. Clara had always been the heart of our home, and without her, everything felt off-kilter. I missed her laughter, the way she would light up when discussing wine, the warmth of her presence that had filled our lives with joy. I had taken away her passion, her source of happiness, and in doing so, I had lost a part of myself. I found myself questioning whether the revenge had been worth it. As the weeks turned into months, I began to notice the impact of my actions. Clara was no longer a part of my life, and I was left to confront the consequences of my choices. I had cut off her access to the vineyard, but I had also severed the connection we once shared. The thought haunted me, gnawing at the edges of my conscience. Was this what I truly wanted, to see her suffer at the expense of our love? I found myself reflecting on our relationship, on the moments we had shared, and the trust that had been shattered. I had been so consumed by my desire for revenge that I had failed to recognize the complexity of our love. While Clara's betrayal had hurt me deeply, it had also revealed the cracks in our relationship, cracks that I had ignored for far too long. One evening, as I stood on the balcony of the vineyard, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. The vineyard had become a symbol of my pain, but it was also an opportunity for growth. I realized that I needed to confront my own demons, to understand why I had allowed myself to be blindsided by Clara's actions. I took a step back, reevaluating my motivations. I had acted out of anger and hurt, but beneath it all, I had been searching for validation and control. I had wanted to prove that I was not a victim, that I could reclaim my power, but in doing so, I had lost sight of the love we had shared. As I delved deeper into the operations of the vineyard, I began to find solace in the land itself. The vines thrived under my care, and I discovered a newfound passion for winemaking. I started to envision a future where the vineyard could be a place of healing, not just for me, but for others as well. I began hosting community events, inviting people to experience the beauty of the vineyard, to share in the joy of wine without the shadows of betrayal hanging over us. But the memories of Clara lingered. I couldn't erase the past, nor could I forget the hurt. I often wondered if she was finding peace in her own way, if she had moved on, or if my actions had left a lasting scar. I wanted to believe that we could have found a way to rebuild our relationship, but I knew that trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered and difficult to mend. One evening, as I sat in the tasting room, I received a call from Clara. My heart raced as I answered, unsure of what to expect. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice tentative but steady. I hesitated, the memories of our confrontation flooding back. But I realized I owed it to myself to face her, to confront the feelings that had been building inside me. "Yes," I replied, my voice calm despite the turmoil within. "I think we need to talk." When we met, the air was thick with unspoken words. Clara looked different, humbled perhaps, but still beautiful. We sat across from each other, the weight of our shared history between us, and I could see the pain etched on her face. "I've missed you," she said softly, her eyes searching mine. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." "Me too," I admitted, feeling the vulnerability of the moment. What happened between us? It hurt more than I can express, but I've realized that revenge isn't the answer. It only left me with emptiness. Clara nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm sorry for what I did. I can't change the past, but I want to understand how we got here. I want to find a way to move forward, even if it's not together." As we talked, I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crumble. We shared our feelings, our regrets, and slowly I began to see the possibility of healing. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew that trust would take time to rebuild, but I was willing to try. In that moment, I understood that the vineyard was not just a place of revenge. It could be a place of reconciliation, a new beginning where we could learn from our mistakes. I realized that love, while fragile, could also be resilient if nurtured with honesty and understanding. As we left the vineyard that evening, I felt a sense of hope flicker within me. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it, together or apart. I had taken control of my life, but now I had a chance to redefine what that control meant. In the end, I learned that revenge may provide a fleeting sense of satisfaction, but true healing comes from understanding, forgiveness, and the willingness to grow. The vineyard would always be a part of our story, but it no longer had to symbolize betrayal. Instead, it could become a testament to our resilience, a reminder that love, even when tested, could still thrive in the most unexpected of places. And as the sun set behind the vines, I knew that whatever the future held, I was ready to embrace it.